to support Trump.
Carla Marshall says people are working hard to keep Trump down, but he just bounces right up.
I really love the guy, and I've never felt that way about a politician before. He says stuff that's inappropriate a lot, but a lot of it is stuff that I thought.
Professor David Jones says Trump's presidency was outstanding.
His attitude, his language is sometimes awful, but I don't have to have a president that I like. I have to have a president who runs this country effectively. He does.
He did a great job the first 4 years. I want him back in office.
The guy went to North Korea. Nobody's done that before.
Volunteers at Trump's New Hampshire campaign headquarters on Sunday tried to convince undecided voters to choose the former president. Campaign volunteer Tracy Sosa says the team is going to knock on doors and make phone calls.
Anything to get President Trump back in. He's for the people. And I hope everybody sees that.
Michael Torchetti says he never voted before Trump got into politics in 2016.
He's the greatest president of all time, and I think if everything's fair and there's no cheating, then he'll win.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ended his campaign on Sunday. Trump reacted to the news.
But as you know, he left the campaign trail today at 3 p.m., and in so doing, he was very gracious and he endorsed me.
Iowans gave Trump an overwhelming victory in the first vote of the GOP primary contest. The former president currently leads former Ambassador Nikki Haley in New Hampshire by 17 points in the latest Real Clear polling average. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
To say earlier after she spoke just a few hours ago.
I like some of her policies. I mean, obviously, we can't agree with everything. But for the most part, I believe she would be a great president.
I like her a lot. Yeah, I've been to a number of her events, and she, what she calls, speaks hard truths. I think she says what she means, and
she's smart. She seems to have some common sense.
She's certainly a vast improvement over Donald Trump. We're poised at the edge of World War III, in my opinion. We need people who can think seriously about their responsibilities as president.
She's the candidate that I'm endorsing. I'm for. As I said before to other people, baby boomers need to step back, and we need some new blood. And Haley, to me, seems the most electable from our standpoint.
Okay, and what issues are most important to you this election cycle?
Well, I just retired, so Social Security and VA.
Financial responsibility. Certainly, I think the federal government has lost that.
GOP primary, although Trump does not seem to be actually concerned with that. New polling, actually 3 polls released today, shows that Trump is maintaining his lead over Nikki Haley, leading her by some 19 to 27 percentage points, which has been consistent with polls earlier. And Trump has also been touting support he's been getting from South Carolina Republican leaders, including, of course, Senator Tim Scott. And just today, Congressman Nancy Mace also went on to endorse Trump, and that is up to Nikki Haley. But it's unclear, actually, whether Governor Ron DeSantis will be joining Trump like the others are doing for his campaign right here in New Hampshire, especially amid the heated back and forth between the two of them in the past few months. And actually, in a Fox interview aired today, Trump said that it's highly unlikely that he's going to peg Ron DeSantis as a potential VP peg or a potential cabinet member position. Watch.
It's probably unlikely, but, I have to be honest, everything's a possibility, but I think it's highly unlikely. I have a lot of great people, and I have great people that have been with me right from the beginning.
Still wondering why this Trump rally is unusually late at 9 p.m. Eastern Time today. That's because Trump was supposed to be sitting in a courtroom in New York for a defamation trial involving former columnist E. Jean Carroll today, but that trial proceeding was postponed to Wednesday after the judge expressed concerns about COVID, especially among Trump's lawyers and also some of the jurors. So that's going to happen on Wednesday, a day after New Hampshire primary, and hopefully, of course, nothing happens, and we'll be able to go smooth as we're supposed to. Back to you. Iris, thank you for that update.
To meet society's needs, ExxonMobil has been dueling with activist investors for many years. These investors want the energy giant to wind down its oil and gas business and to invest in renewable energy. Arjuna Capital says that environmental responsibility and social justice are all bottom line concerns. Follow This
Social
says
justice.
green shareholders change the world, and says it unites responsible shareholders to push big oil to go green. If the proposal were to win approval, Exxon would still not be legally required to comply with it, but it would exert pressure on Exxon to address the issues raised in the proposal. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
Coming up.
A foreign terrorist organization as terrorists, like we did in the Trump. In fact, they took a 180 and delisted them. And now, after 3 years of misgivings and giving Iran $6 billion to fund its mercenary forces, like the Houthis, the Bidens are trying to make up for it. And I think it's too late. You can't retroactively safeguard this country by having the media say, oh, look, Joe Biden listed the Houthis as specially designated global terrorists. That's nothing but a headline grab. It doesn't sanction them. It doesn't cripple them from the world economy. It doesn't allow us to target them kinetically with the prioritization that we had for terrorists in the Trump administration. So I don't trust them to safeguard our security.
So you just mentioned Biden's 180 on this Houthis designation as a terrorist group. That's really interesting considering now they're even going further. Reportedly, they're planning to start a U.S. military campaign to target Houthis in Yemen. Some are concerned this will rope the U.S. forces into another unpredictable Middle Eastern conflict. Do you think this is an appropriate military campaign to be taking place right now?
Well, look, there are 2 U.S. dead Navy special warfare operators because of the reckless Austin Biden national security policy in this country by issuing edicts from literally the bedside table. And when you get partial intelligence and when you don't prioritize the threats to this country like terrorists, you can't make up for it in a matter of weeks. I'm all for
House Republicans to just swallow this bill?
I think it shows the hypocrisy of the ways over on the Senate there. If you want border security, then get border security. The Houthis, the Iranian mercenary force, along with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Chinese, and the Russians, have seeded at least 24 known terrorists into the United States that FBI Director Chris Wray and DHS Secretary Mayorkas have admitted they lost. They lost 24 known terrorists. And so any passage of a border security bill that doesn't secure the border is wholly insufficient, in my opinion. And any leveraging of the situation overseas, which in my opinion is a world war. There's a war in the Ukraine and there's a war in Israel with Iran and its mercenary forces. And every leverage and inappropriate leveraging to say Congress isn't doing enough. Well, they're not doing enough because they haven't sealed the border. So I'm all for a bill that actually shuts down the illegal invasion and protects America so we don't have a domestic terrorist attack here on our soil.
Great points. Thank you so much, Kash Patel. It's great to have you.
War. It could be, for example, the combination of a cyber attack with a physical invasion. It could be the combination of a biological warfare attack, a virus, in combination with a cyber attack to bring down the electric grid, and can then follow it up, of course, with an invasion. It can be a combination of many of these things, and then what you call a fifth column force, which would be, let's say, people who are planted in a country, maybe through the mass immigration system that you have throughout most of Europe. Remember that they've had a lot of refugees coming from Ukraine and from Russia. Maybe a lot of those people would be sleeper agents. They could get triggered, fifth column attack, destroying local assets, maybe taking out the water supply by poisoning it, taking out the electric grid, which notably during the Cold War were some of the plans the fifth column from the Soviet Union were assigned to do in the United States in the case of a war. Combining those with other forms of war, that's hybrid warfare, which is what they're saying would be the model for the attack in Eastern Europe. Now, it notes the newspaper, Bild, this German newspaper, detailed how multiple potential alarming scenarios could unfold in the months ahead. One of these, it says, is dubbed Alliance Defense 2025, which is going to start in February with Russia mobilizing an additional 200,000 soldiers. It notes that emboldened by Western financial support for Ukraine drying up, Russia would launch a massive spring offensive against Ukrainian armed forces. It says the potential scenario outlines how Russia could start waging war in the Baltics by July using, quote, severe cyber attacks. Again, we're talking about hybrid warfare, while stirring up discontent among Russian nationals in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, again being a fifth column type attack. Now, in addition to this, because it's not just limited to, these leaked German documents, it's actually bigger than this. NATO is launching its own military drills, again focused on Russia. Now, gearing up for war, NATO calls up what they're saying is the biggest global force in decades, with 90,000 troops, which are going to be we're going to begin what they call Steadfast Defender World War III drills. This is according to the Sun UK. It notes that NATO has announced its biggest call-up in decades as 90,000 troops prepare to begin World War III drills in a matter of days. And notes, of course, it's framing these as World War III drills. Keep in mind the broader context of it. Military drills often signify, well, one, the rallying up of local forces in a given region. It's a way of doing show of force operations. It's also a way of bringing your troops to a specific area were a war or an invasion to take place. One of the concerns when it comes to surprise attack, for example, is that Russia, remember we were talking just a minute ago about in 2025 they're going to be rallying 200,000 soldiers for Alliance Defense 2025, bringing those up to their borders in key areas. The concern is that they could use that as a smokescreen to launch a full-scale invasion. So taken into context of that, if NATO is launching its biggest call-up rallying of 90,000 troops, again, in their region, this is also a way of mobilizing local forces in a way that looks like it's just a military drill. Now, the Sun UK notes that among that number will be 20,000 British troops as the alliance plans to test allies on their ability to engage in conflict, notably with someone as capable as Russia. It notes that Steadfast Defender, this operation, is going to begin next week, and it's going to run till late May, and it's going to involve units from all 31 NATO member countries, plus candidate member Sweden. Remember, one of the big red lines with Ukraine is membership with NATO, and one of the big concerns with the expansion of the war over Ukraine is whether NATO is going to get pulled into it. Now look, while this narrative is going around, NATO is putting a timeline on a potential war with Russia pretty far ahead. Now there's mixed analysis on this. I want to make it clear. Some people are saying it could be next year. Some people are saying maybe even sooner than that. When it comes to the CCP, they're talking about invasion of Taiwan within the next 2 years. And when Biden asked, of course, Xi Jinping, the leader of the CCP, about this, Xi Jinping noted to Biden that it's not necessarily limited within that time frame, suggesting that the war in China, for example, could be much sooner. But NATO, for some reason, they're saying maybe within 20 years. And notes that a top NATO military chief is talking about this. This is Admiral Rob Bauer, who is saying governments must begin to prepare civilian populations for mass mobilization. It's according to Express UK. And notes that systems should be put in place to ensure this is possible, according to, again, this NATO military chief. They're talking about the Third World War. Now, others suggest that 20 years is a bit too maybe optimistic. They're suggesting it could happen much, much sooner than this. And if you look at the different things taking place in different parts of the world, frankly, I think it's more likely it's going to be much sooner. Now, it does look like we're heading towards a large-scale global conflict. Call it what you will. Call it World War III. Call it multiple proxy wars. Call it the world at war. But we're looking at potential conflict with Russia, Iran, various terrorist organizations, local, smaller countries like Venezuela, North Korea, maybe even the Chinese Communist Party. And I'll be explaining this. Let me show you. This is Newsweek. It says that the editor-in-chief of a Russian state-owned broadcaster, RT, is predicting that World War III will definitely break out in the Middle East. And notes that this individual has made many posts on X, who the U.S. State Department deems a Kremlin propagandist, raised questions about when world powers, including the United States, would spark a major conflict, although she claims that Russia will sit out the major impending war. I don't know about that. Now, she said, and now the Third World War, whether a world war will break out now or a little later, depends on whether Washington, the United States, believes it will be useful to it now for the elections or vice versa. Judging by the choral silence of the American media, they are still thinking. In other words, the United States is getting ready to have its presidential elections. There's going to be a lot of, let's say, local discontent. There's a lot of divisions in politics. Congress, as we speak right now, is not fully passing its spending bills. They're doing these bills just to avoid the government shutdown. The United States is deeply divided right now. Many would argue we're deeply weakened right now. They're having a military recruitment crisis where they've had like significantly fewer, interestingly, white males being willing to join the military. And given this current circumstance the United States is in, there is a window of weakness in the United States, the country which has become, like it or not, the global police force, the nation that steps forward to defend countries from tyrants in other countries and that tries to prevent world wars from happening. While the United States is dealing with its own internal problems, the big concern is that, well, we can get pulled into a few proxy wars that keep our military busy, and while we're not willing to fight large-scale wars because of internal instability, another country may try to launch an actual world war. Now, as all of this happens, on the note of, will we fight a terror war, which is what Russia is suggesting, and saying a world war could start over that, Iran, right now, as we speak, could soon build a nuclear weapon. In fact, the window for them building a nuclear weapon is about 2 weeks. And this is pushing the world a lot closer to the brink of what we've been discussing. And also, the Chinese Communist Party is now purging its military as the question of will the CCP invade Taiwan is growing louder. CCP leader Xi Jinping is currently purging military officers, notably the individuals who would oppose him invading Taiwan. And he's allegedly replacing them with officers who would obey that command. I'll be talking about all these topics and a whole lot more, but that's going to be only on Epic TV. So join me there for more in-depth analysis for the rest of the episode, and also for our live Q&A right after that for these uranium enrichment plants in Iran. Now, they need 90% enrichment to build weapons, but the concern is where they're at right now, they could very quickly reach the possibility of being able to fill the nuclear weapon in about 2 weeks. Now, Fox News says that Iran has boosted its production of highly enriched uranium after a slowdown earlier this year, the UN's nuclear watchdog said in a report on Tuesday, according to Reuters and the Associated Press. It notes that Iran is currently enriching uranium up to 60%, which is reaching the 90% needed for weapons, according to one of its plants. And it notes that the Director General for the International Atomic Energy Agency said in a report that Iran had increased its production of highly enriched uranium, reversing a previous output reduction from mid-2023. And again, what happened between mid-2023 and now is that the Biden administration gave them billions of dollars by freeing it up for them to spend.
Yep.
Now look, it says a State Department spokesperson told Fox News Digital they are greatly concerned by the report and that Iran has no credible civilian justification for enrichment up to 60%. So why are they doing it? If Iran has no civilian justification, then what is the actual purpose of them enriching uranium? Well, look, it's probably because they're doing what they keep saying they're going to do, which is build a nuclear weapon. And remember, folks,
and Joe Biden is helping.
Reaching this level of enrichment with nuclear weapons, that is the red line for Israel invading Iran. And Israel is already refusing to follow U.S. suggestions over to handle the war with Hamas. They are doing their own thing. They're not listening to the U.S. They're not listening to the United Nations. They're going at their own war. They're attacking targets in nearby countries, including in Lebanon. And as all of this takes place, the United States is getting pulled into their war. And also, a very real possibility right now of us having to fight regional wars, maybe even with Iran, but at the very least in some of the surrounding countries. Already, the Houthis, we're attacking them right now. We're fighting them already. They're attacking shipping container ships. We see, of course, that Iran proxy forces are attacking U.S. bases in the entire region, including in Iraq. There were reports, unconfirmed still, of even ballistic missiles being used against some U.S. targets. And right now, again, the Houthis were possibly getting pulled into a war with them in Yemen. And Biden had to put them back on the terror list, interestingly. CNBC is saying that Yemen's Houthi rebels are enthusiastically confronting America directly. The organization's leader said in a televised speech, vowing to continue the group's campaign of attacks on ships in the Red Sea until Israel's blockade of Gaza is lifted. And notably, some major shipping container companies that do these big ships, they're now avoiding the Red Sea entirely, meaning these terrorist organizations have been able to shut down one of the world's most important shipping choke points. Now, back to this report, it says the remarks came as the U.S. steps up its strikes on Houthi targets ahead of President Joe Biden's admission to reporters that so far his administration's military action was not having its intended effect. Now, why could our military threats and, speak softly but carry a big stick, why could that not be working? Well, maybe it's because these people in these countries that are, frankly run by terrorists turn on the TV and they see like men in drag wearing U.S. Navy uniforms dancing around, and they say, you know what, I think we could beat these guys in a fight. Maybe it's because they turn on the TV or look at TikTok and they see that our military has guys in drag, dressed like women, making videos and acting as spokespersons for our military. Maybe they don't take us seriously. Maybe it's because they know that our own men don't want to join the military right now because of some of the woke policies they've adopted. And maybe it's because we've, let's say, refocused a lot of our military to, issues like climate change rather than being able to fight wars. They want to have electric tanks and things like this. Now, back to the report further in. It says the U.S. carried out its fifth airstrike against Houthi targets. Command said were aimed into the Southern Sea and prepared to launch. Now, where is these terrorist organization, these Houthi rebels, where are they getting anti-ship missiles? Well, probably from Iran, and that's the big concern. Now, that being said, as we speak right now, I-24 News is saying that over 75 people were killed in a U.S.-led attack in Yemen, including Hezbollah and the IRGC, Iran. It notes that British and American airstrikes on Houthi facilities in Yemen resulted in 75 dead, including operatives from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, that's the military of Iran, and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Many sources revealed to Sky News Arabia. And it said, according to the report, 9 of the deaths from the airstrike were foreign experts, detailed as 3 from the IRGC and 6 from the terrorist organization Hezbollah. Furthermore, these operatives were killed in various separate operations and locations. Now remember, with Yemen, with Lebanon, these are some of the hot spots where there are some concerns we could get pulled into a regional war. Biden has been warned of not starting a war with Hezbollah, which is an international terrorist organization, a proxy force of Iran, with heavy presence throughout most of Europe, most of the Arab world, and even a lot of Latin America. In fact, Hezbollah even has political parties in some Latin American countries. They have huge influence there. And if you're talking about mass illegal migration into the United States, ironically being facilitated in cahoots between the Biden administration, the United Nations, and various NGOs, one of the major concerns is that terrorist organizations could weaponize the migrant flows to bring terrorists into the United States. Sleeper cells, maybe at the worst case of that, which could include Hezbollah fighters. Now, that being said, in addition to this, it notes that furthermore, the airstrikes were described as resulting in the destruction of missile platforms and drone warehouses, as well as thwarting Houthi operations, which would have led to further attacks on international shipping. In other words, we're already getting pulled into battles that are leading to the deaths of Iranian military and Hezbollah fighters. In other words, we are very much getting pulled into a possible proxy war with Iran. Now, New York Post is saying that to bolster the Tehran-backed terrorist group's strikes on shipping vessels crossing the Red Sea, according to reports citing regional and Iranian sources. It notes that Iran has beefed up its supply of weapons to the Houthis, like these anti-ship missiles, who were labeled only recently as terrorists by U.S. officials. Because remember, the Houthis were labeled as a terrorist organization. Biden removed that label, and has decided to redesignate them as terrorists because, well, they are terrorists. And, of course, as this happens, there is a very real problem of us possibly getting pulled into a very large, very possibly military conflict with Iran, with the Houthis, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, and, of course, because of the international presence of these terrorist organizations, possibly in a global terror war. Now, as Russia is talking about World War III, as they're suggesting that even the terror war could become a third world war, there's also the big question of the Chinese Communist Party. Will the CCP invade Taiwan? Well, CCP leader Xi Jinping, right now as we speak, is purging his military. He's getting rid of military officers who would oppose a war like that. And he's allegedly replacing them with officers who would obey the command to invade Taiwan. Now, Business Insider said this, is that Xi Jinping is fighting with China's own military, seeking to purge commanders he sees as unwilling or unable to go to war, military analyst told Business Insider. It says the Chinese leader is trying to gain control of the of the military, and according to Gordon Chang, he says, I think that he is thinking that he needs officers who are prepared to actually fight. Now, Gordon Chang is a senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of China is Going to War, and he said there is a sense that many of China's general officers don't want to fight. And so we really have a force led by an officer corps that is ambivalent about going to war, suggesting why Xi Jinping may be purging these individuals so that he can have people there who will obey his commands.
Just like Stalin.
Everyone, that's all for tonight. Thank you so much.